Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's event. I am just so excited. I got a couple great experts here with me, and together we're going to provide you with very insightful, powerful tools for you to overcome the number one threat to air safety, loss of control in flight, through personalized protocols and upset prevention and recovery training designed exactly for you. Let's jump right into it. Well, interestingly enough, everybody, we're transmitting live here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, or X, but the main platform, LinkedIn, is not transmitting right now. So we'll figure that out. We're going to go ahead and go with the event, and we'll retransmit it later. We have a great group of people here with me, as I mentioned in the opening, and we're going to talk about this topic of personalized protocols. So let's just go ahead and bring the slides up in, and we're going to talk about these gentlemen here and have a little bit of an understanding of who they are. So Otter, why don't we go over to you about, maybe you could talk about your role and Tom's role at APS when it comes to implementing really customized solutions for our customers.
Yeah, it's great to be with everybody here. I'm mainly responsible for ensuring that the programs are delivered in a standardized way. I work with the pilots not only in their training and standardization and QA throughout the programs, our elite instructors that we have here, but I also work with the UPRT consultants such as Tom to ensure they are clear on what is being delivered, and we're highly coordinated throughout the various programs.
Cool, Tom. Now, what about yourselves? When folks call in, they're going to be talking to you and your team. Do you want to just do a little bit of an overview on that?
Excellent. Yeah, my name is Tom Wakis. I'm the Director of UPRT Solutions here at APS, and my team's largely responsible for consulting and educating, different departments about their operations and how we can most effectively mitigate the number one threat to air safety, loss of control in flight.
Cool, great. Well, guess what? Through my control panel here, I've reinitiated it in LinkedIn. So it is up and running now. Unfortunately, we missed the first part of it, but that's okay. We have the meat of what we're going to be talking about coming up next. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So the agenda today, we're going to be going through really our motivation and why we are here today as an organization, talking about personalized protocols and upset training. It's really central to being able to mitigate this risk of loss of control in flight. Then we're going to dive in specifically to the protocols themselves, and we have a worksheet that you're going to be able to download. We've made it really, really easy that you're going to be able to just go through and essentially interview yourself on how you operate, what you operate, and where you operate, and it's going to pump out the ideal solution for you that you can use as a talk-to chart when you call into your UPRT provider or APS. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the provider prerequisites, and in fact, Otter's going to go through some of the technical machinery going on in the background of an effective UPRT program and what's required to really be able to execute on personalized protocols. Because for one thing, not all UPRT providers are the same and not all programs are the same. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes, but for you, the pilot, you should not have to worry about that. That should be something that either your auditor at your organization has gone through, or that the provider themselves can demonstrate their compliance with all the things we're going to talk about. Then we're going to jump into questions. So I really encourage you at this point, if you have questions at any point, just type it into the chat. I'll see it in the control room here. We have Carrie Bryson, our Director of Marketing, that's online as well. She'll be watching. And we're going to try to get to the questions somewhere around the bottom of the hour here the best we can. Let's go ahead and jump in. Otter, I'm surprised you with this a little bit. Do you want to talk about our purpose and our kind of our vision here at APS, and then I'll compliment you a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah, our purpose is to help pilots bring everyone home safely, and this is what we do full time. Really 7 days a week, you might say. And we specialize in mitigating the number one threat in aviation, which is loss of control in flight. So that is all we do is we are loss of control in flight mitigation specialists. And we've been doing that for nearly 30 years. And our brand promise is every pilot trained in control all the time.
So one of the questions I get asked a lot is, BJ, why do you get online and start talking about how APS does it and gives away all your secrets? Well, first off, there should be no secrets in safety, right? We are here to try to elevate the solutions of the industry, and we're going to talk about really how and why APS is at the forefront of the industry and literally what we do to get there. You know, and these guys on the call today will know that whenever we're in a meeting, whenever we're making decisions, we talk about we need to do the right thing for the customer. We pick the airplanes that are the best airplanes. We have the instructors that are the best instructors. The program design is designed around mitigating the risk of loss of control in flight. So the reason why we're here today is, yes, we're going to be talking about things that many providers don't do. We want them to elevate their game. We want them to be able to go after the threat of loss of control in flight and help save lives. It's just such an important calling as a UPRT provider in this industry that we want to do everything we can to help that process. Tom, anything you want to add to that at all, or Otter, before we move on?
Just to complement what you said, I mean, it's truly not about competing with other providers. It's about saving as many lives as possible and doing that through just the training that's needed.
Exactly. And so, you know, we're always lifting the hood and what we do at APS and how we do it. And, you know, really, you know, the proof is in the pudding, right? Who are the organizations that trust us? This is just a small sampling. Major air carriers with the UPRT solutions, insurance agencies, large training providers like CAE, SimCom. Wyvern represents one of the leading, if not the leading edge safety organization in the industry, partners with APS as well in overcoming this risk of loss of control in flight. So let's talk about how and why these amazing public major organizations trust APS with implementing their UPRT solutions, because while we do that for them, we are here to provide that for you personally as a pilot or your flight department to really help you, literally to save your life. That's why you're here. That's why we're here and what we're trying to accomplish. So, Otter, why don't you talk about the stats and kind of what we're trying to accomplish today in our discussion?
Yeah, just for some of you that may not have seen these stats, and these are some of the latest stats out there, the chart on the left is showing the worldwide commercial jet fleet fatalities, total number of fatalities, and the causal factors related to those fatalities. And the number one causal factor is loss of control in flight. And that is that far left column that's in red. And you can see by a long shot that it is the number one killer. And again, largely, what does this mean? This means that the pilots failed to either prevent or recover from an upset flight condition. And they ended up statistic there. This particular chart on the left is mainly airlines, but we have corporate arena on the right. And we can see the number one causal factor of fatalities there. Again, not runway incursions, not even controlled flight into terrain, but again, is loss of control of flight. So understand that these statistics, which largely have been unchanged in terms of the number one killer for many, many years now, is due to our current regulatory structure and training environment that we're in, right? The current way that we are training pilots in general, all right, is contributing directly to these statistics. And so we have to have a paradigm shift if we're going to take a bite out of loss control and flight. And that's what those green arrows are trying to show. And that's what our purpose is. That's what our mission is as a company, is we're trying to help the industry crush this loss control and flight threat.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. You hit it right on the nail on the head there, Otters, that red block right there is a result of industry best practices, a result of what's going on right now and how the industry is training for this. And because there's just this tendency to assume we can overcome loss of control by just tweaking what we're doing already. And while we need to do that, no, this indicates a massive gap in training. And we're seeing that it really is associated with manual flight operation proficiency, flight envelope awareness. The knowledge associated with flight path management is central to upset prevention and recovery training. And, Otter talked about how this is a result of UPRT. Every fatal loss of control in flight accident goes through the window of being an airplane upset. It is the path through which loss of control happens. And our goal here is to prevent it from the beginning, or should it be encountered, giving the skills to mitigate it right at the source if you get into an airplane upset event. Okay, cool. So correct. Here we're going to talk about the paradigm shift to drive that down. It can be done. In fact, a great study that was just released not too long ago was with Delta Airlines. After 5 years and 5 million flights, they saw that precursor upset events by implementing UPRT with APS reduced those precursor events by a full 50%. That is a massive increase in safety. And it's not because they were doing the regulatory minimum. It means they had a very powerful program, but they also had fantastic leadership at Delta Airlines that recognized this is not the status quo. We need to take interventive action to solve this. Okay, so we're going to jump right into the resource here right after this slide. So I want everybody to get ready to download a resource, but I want to kind of, when we were putting these slides together, I realized that we're missing a "You Are Here" map. And I want to do that right now for everybody to understand, where are you in the journey of the process? Now, the good news is there is a tremendous amount of work that a provider needs to do to be able to deliver effective upset training. But as a pilot, it's very easy for you to go and find a very effective program as long as the provider has done their work to get ready. So here we go. We're going to jump into what it takes. So simply put, for a UPRT provider to evolve to the point where they're going to be able to deliver powerful solutions, they have to be 100% industry compliant. That means compliant with ICAO, FAA, EASA, all the regulatory requirements out there and all the best practices. They cannot play lip service to that. They have to make sure that that is the first hurdle that they overcome. The second one is they need to have a system of maximizing the quality and effectiveness of what they are doing through instructors, through platforms, through program design, best practices, and so on. And where we are now is where that orange block is customized to unique pilot needs, because not all UPRT programs are the same at all. A single engine VFR Cessna pilot has a very different program than the multi-engine high performance, high altitude crewed Global Express pilot, for example. And we're going to be talking about that as we go through. But the last part is kind of the ongoing career risk mitigation. So the provider has to be compliant, has to maximize their effectiveness, allow the pilots to design their own program, and then continue to evolve over time. So it's really important for the provider to understand this process. So this is essentially the provider journey that either they're on or should be on to be able to deliver the programs we're going to talk about today. Now, the one role is going to be the auditor's journey. So if you're at a flight department, for example, or at an airline, is you really need to double down and have a hard look at the provider to make sure that they have all of this in place and proven and established in a way that can be demonstrated to be effective. Now, the great news, for example, at APS is we've led all this for 30 years. So, for example, we look to the left, we have ICAO as a great resource, ICAO Manual and UPRT. APS in that center one, maximizing provider effectiveness. We have the Every Pilot in Control Solution Standard that Otter's going to talk about in a minute, which maximizes UPRT provider capability. We freely shared that with the industry. In 2019, any provider can go out and get the information they need to be able to do that. Personalized protocols are the next one. And then the one on the far right is what we call the life plan. So the You Are Here map is what we're talking about today is right here, the personalized protocols. So it presupposes that the provider has gone through this hard work. It presupposes that everything is in place for the provider to be able to maximize the solution. So it should be up to you now to work with the provider to be able to find the ideal program for you. And if you don't know much about UPRT, it's got to be easy. And today we're talking about how to make that easy. Okay. So personalized protocols, Tom, how would you describe that? Because we're going to go to the sheet. By the way, folks, if you'd like to get this worksheet right now, there's the QR code. There's the URL. You can go and get it. And I'll talk about it a little bit before we go to it. So Tom, what are your thoughts on what this is, and how does it help you when you're consulting with customers and flight departments and airlines and flight schools looking for UPRT?
Yeah, the personalized protocols really make accelerate the conversation to the solution much quicker. I mean, it's a lot of folks think it's too complex of a problem. The great news is over 30 years of fine tuning our solutions, we have the most powerful solutions in the industry to save lives. And getting there and understanding what your operational risk is based on what, where, and how you operate is critical if you want to fully mitigate the threat.
Awesome. That's great. So again, we're showing what it is. Now, while it might be true that APS may be one of just a few providers in the world right now that can do this, we are trying to elevate the industry. We are trying to help everybody understand what's required to be completely effective at this. Now, the file that you're downloading by going to this QR code is an XL file. And I've heard from Director of Marketing, Carrie, that it works with the modern versions of XL. If you have an old version and it doesn't work, if you can't get the file to work or you don't have XL, you just get a hold of APS and we'll share a screen with you and we'll take you through that process. When I show you, you're going to see how simple it is to create an industry-leading life-saving program. So let's go ahead and jump to that right now. Let me go ahead and share that screen. I'm going to go right to that tab. Let's have a look at it. Okay. All right, everybody. Now, this is seemingly like a lot, but it's not. Now, what this is essentially an interview that you go through yourself. So if you download this resource, I'm going to now zoom in. Let's go to 100%, or is it 125? I can't remember what we landed on. If you look on the left side here, when you download the sheet, all you need to do is fill out the left column. So for example, let's use that example of the multi-engine high-performance jet operator at high altitude operating as a crew. You simply say, okay, I'm a multi-engine business jet operator. I fly at high altitude, medium, and low altitude. I operate VFR, IFR night. I have a crewed operation. And you can see that as you fill it out, it completes what the optimum program are here. So Otter, when we went through this yesterday, you wanted to spend a little bit of time on this panel right here. Do you want to go ahead and talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, when you look off to the right of those check boxes, you'll see three columns starting at the top. There's one that's labeled best, one that's labeled effective, and then one that's minimum. I just want to remind everybody that, frankly, anybody with an aerobatic airplane and a commercial license can hang a shingle and say they teach upset training. And there's a lot of, shall we say, providers out there that are offering any number of choices there, and unfortunately, largely not going to address most of the critical mitigation criteria that have to be addressed. And so, but there are minimums that should be addressed in order to develop skills in a pilot that make him actually safer and make a difference in their safety. And so, in a sense, we've got these three levels here, and the best over here on the right is going to take advantage of the various platforms that you can use in upset training, such as an on-aircraft platform, such as a simulator there, and that's basically an integrated approach there. Now, what you're seeing here is that how it plays out. On the left column is showing just an on-aircraft upset training program. So it's possible to just go through upset training and use an aircraft only, and not integrate it with a simulator. Now, we feel it's very valuable to integrate a simulator as long as it's taught properly, right? And that makes a more holistic and well-rounded program and skill development for the pilot. That right column there, that's kind of yellow, that kind of represents where you can actually get type-specific training, and we have that ability here as well. So if you're flying a Gulfstream, so not only can you get non-type specific and class-specific training, but you can even get type-specific. So those are some of the kinds of training protocols that a provider could provide. We do that pretty extensively and have been doing it for many years.
Yeah, so the one thing I would add to that is that we didn't talk about it in our opening slide, but APS has built facilities specifically to accomplish this implementation. So here in one location, we have the classrooms for live instructor-led training. We have aerobatic piston airplanes. We have aerobatic jet airplanes, complex airplanes, high altitude airplanes, and high performance jet operations. We have convertible simulator for all classes of available airplanes, and we use virtual reality for type specific simulations. So the idea behind it is that at APS, and I strongly encourage other providers to do this as well, is to be able to implement a very effective, robust solution, because it really requires integrated training to fully mitigate the risk. And we're going to talk about that later in our presentation here to see the contribution of the various platforms to mitigating risk. Now, the good news is, if you take a look over on the left, let's say now you just want to do on-aircraft upset training. You just come over to here and you look under on-aircraft training, and that's what you want to do below this. If you're a multi-engine business jet pilot, then here's the best on-aircraft upset training that you should do. You want to do integrated training, which includes simulation. That's what you want to do. You want to do the advanced integrated that has on-aircraft, class-specific, type-specific simulation, expanded online preparatory training. Then you'd want to do the advanced integrated program. But remember, we design these solutions not to force the best solution on you all the time, but to accommodate what you are specifically looking for. So let's say your flight department is either risk adverse, or they only want to go in simulators and you just want to stick to that. Well, you can go here to go to simulator training, and we can provide both class-specific and type-specific simulator training upgraded to what we call the Every Pilot in Control Solution Standard. So remember, all of this presupposes that the provider is able to deliver all this to maximum capability and maximum effectiveness. Just because somebody has an aerobatic airplane, to Otter's point, somebody has a jet that's capable, somebody has a simulator, it really is incumbent upon the program designer and the instructor specifically to make sure that that training is valuable. So for example, under high altitude, if you're a high altitude operator, you'd be wanting to add in high altitude jet operations, high altitude airplane upsets. But if you're not, it's not there, right? So if you don't operate at high altitude, you can see that the standard program already builds that in automatically. So the idea behind this resource is for you to essentially fill this out on the left. Just click the check boxes, save the outcome, and then go to the provider and talk about it. Okay, and over here on the right, you'll see the phone number, for example, at APS. But if you have a provider that can do all this, or at least the portions that you feel need to be done, and they meet industry requirements, they've maximized their capabilities, then certainly go to them with this. If they're trying to talk you out of this, it could be a red flag, because we have determined over the 30 years of doing this, this is actually what it takes for the paradigm shift. This is actually what's required to save your life, and we are here to save your life. I can't overemphasize that. While that we have a business of upset prevention and recovery training, we are desperately trying to help you in your safety pursuits, and to save you, save your family, save your customers, save the airplane, to be able to live another day. So Otter, anything you want to add to this before we move back to the presentation to fill in some of the gaps?
No, no. Like you said, this is a very simple tool to use. It's a great reference. Encourage everyone here to simply download it, take a picture of it, whatever you save it. But it is something you can go to a provider and talk about.
Yeah, and I think the beauty is, Tom, for example, if people do this and they fill it out and they call you and share this, it just accelerates the conversation to a powerful solution so quickly. And if they have an auditor that needs to audit the program, my gosh, just come and visit us. No charge. We'll take you through one day of the program. Many organizations, many people looking at UPRT, specifically coming, for example, to a provider like this at APS, is they very often think it's smoke and mirrors, right? And we always say, well, come and see. And every single time they leave being a card-carrying champion, Kool-Aid chugging champion of this implementation to overcome the risk of loss of control in flight. So folks, again, our motivation here is to save lives. Our motivation here is to get providers to elevate their game. There are great providers out there already, but this is really something that needs to be implemented industry-wide. So Tom, anything to add to this before we go back to the presentation?
No, I would just reiterate how simple and easy this tool is to use to really get you where you need to be. And it's just an incredible value.
Okay, cool. Personalized protocols means for you. They're personalized to you and your flight operation, okay? If you fly more than one airplane, think about your most complex airplane when you're approaching this and filling it out. And remember, there are exceptions. There are nuances that a sheet like this can't capture. You call an expert, call the team here, and we'll take you through it. Okay, Tom leads the UPRT solutions team. Otter is the technical expert. He leads the entire pilot crew. He leads the airline training. He's opened many facilities overseas in the United States, military, civilian. He can help you go through that process. And if you have a unique concern, all you need to do here is click on unique operational profile, unique operational demands, or a rare or weird airplane, and then we're going to get together and talk about it. It's in red saying discuss with us because we don't really know what you mean by that. So give us a call and we're going to talk our way through it. Okay, let me just switch screens now. Otter, any words you want to share while I do that?
Oh, I was just going to say hi to David, who's a lead captain with Solaris. They're online. It's great to have him joining us.
Awesome.
He's been through our program. Looks like twice.
Awesome. Love it. Okay. So this slide, it looks a little bit, remember this slide, we talked about what it is. Well, we went through the resource. Now, what are the next steps? Okay. And again, if you go to APS, great. If you go somewhere else, that's fine. But what you need to do is go through the left column, fill out the boxes, note your training options, save it or print it, and then reach out to your provider and discuss with them what is the best fit. So maybe integrated training, while it's the best overall, may not fit what you're looking for in your operation. Maybe you just want to do on-aircraft training. Maybe you want to do only simulator training. Maybe you're just looking for academic training. Well, the good news is a reputable provider that has really gone through that evolution process has all of that available in a turnkey way and should be able to help you. Okay, Otter. Now I'm going to let you talk about some of the stuff going on under the hood. So let me just do a kind of a you are here map again. Okay, is that we have now got very quickly to the download the resource to be able to find a solution. Now what Otter is going to talk about is the mechanisms going on at the provider to make sure that they can provide a life-saving, effective program to fully mitigate that risk of a loss of control in flight. That's what we're trying to talk about here today. Okay, so Otter, over to you.
Yeah, we fully admit here, when we started delivering upset training at the beginning, we certainly didn't do it correctly, or we certainly didn't do it in a way to help pilots fully mitigate their risk. And it's taken us years to really delve into this full time to figure out what is it that pilots actually need. As BJ said, this is gap training, and we've seen that there are some core elements, foundational elements to a program. And this chart, this graph here, is really trying to highlight what those are. Each slice of the pie is integral to all the other pieces of the pie. There, you don't want to take out any one piece. So let's look at those pieces real quickly. Number one is having an elite instructor. You have to have not only an instructor that's an expert in his field, but he has to be specially trained to deliver the upset training elements, and that makes him elite. And that takes time and resources and mentoring, like we do with our instructors for over a year that they go through this mentoring to deliver the program. The other one, number two, is the integrated program. And that's where you combine not only training in an aircraft, an all attitude, all envelope capable airplane, but a simulator or simulator devices of different kinds there. And that makes, again, for a more robust resilient pilot to be able to leave the program and actually have embedded ingrained skills. Number three is certain level of training intensity. We know, we tried, you cannot train pilots to be safer, actually have ingrained recallable skills in one day. You can't do it in one day. And in fact, you can barely begin to make a difference in 2 days. There, you really need to have a minimum of 4 flights. And so there has to be a certain intensity of the program to actually embed these skills that are long lasting and recallable in a crisis. Now, after that, you don't have to go through that intensity. Now you can have shorter bursts of training, such as recurrent training that's shorter in duration. Number 4 is best practices. The program has the industry, starting in 2009, really began to look at loss control in flight and trying to figure out what do we need to do about it and how to implement it. Because, you know, upset training was being taught for decades, but unfortunately there was negative training going on, and it actually led to accidents. And the industry stakeholders agreed that it'd be better for us to do nothing than to do upset training incorrectly. And we've been very concerned about that, that we have to make sure that what is taught, especially in all attitude capable airplanes like aerobatic airplanes or simulators, that it is safe and transferable there. Also, in number 5 is purpose-built platforms. You need the appropriate types of tools to deliver and explain and have pilots, develop skills they need. You cannot do comprehensive upset training in a normal category airplane. You simply can't. We can't go get in an airliner either and practice them there. You can't even get in a simulator of most any kind and actually get a robust upset training program. So we have to have the appropriate tools to be able to make a difference in pilots' lives. And this graph is showing those critical foundational elements. So there's not only initial training, but then there's recurrent training over the life or career of a pilot, because they are perishable skills. And he has to touch those. He has to retouch and reinvigorate and make current those skills that he learned back in his initial upset training. Do we want to go to the next? Want to click it there?
Yeah, I wanted to mention a couple things, though. For example, there's this common belief in the aviation industry. If the FAA would just issue an advisory circular, then loss of control in flight is going to be put to rest. While that's important, and we love them for doing that, thank you. I know Jeff Schrader and Kathy Abbott have been leading the process of creating those truly excellent resources. We would agree they're truly excellent. ICAO manual and UPRT, the Upset Prevention Recovery Training Aid, ACs 12111, 12109, 123 are invaluable, but they are largely meaningless unless you have the instructor to implement them and you have the diversity of what Otter's talking about here to truly make a difference. It's not an attend-only program. It's a program you're involving your awareness, you're evolving your perspective, evolving your skill set, your understanding, the been there, seen that value all comes together to recognize a developing airplane upset way early to prevent it from happening in the first place. And that's what we saw manifest in the Delta study, where they did do it entirely on the simulator. Now, that said, their instructors came to APS for on-aircraft training as well for the reasons we talked about. But you can see that very effective EPIC S2 compliance simulator training can make a huge impact really on the likelihood of an airplane upset, which is really the prevention aspect of it. So super, super powerful. I know that, for example, under best practices there, Otter, I know we want to move on to questions pretty quickly, but I think it was surprising for you, for example, when we had a progressive organization like United Aviate Academy that said, we don't want an industry minimum. We want a UPRT program that is going to save lives, improve risk, and make our pilots the best in the world. The process you went through to vet the ICAO manual and the resources to be able to demonstrate all the areas are addressed in a comprehensive, effective way was not a small project. You want to comment on that quickly, and then we'll move on to the next part of the diagram.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the ICAO manual, especially Doc 111 and then the advisory circulars, even the IATA manual on upset training, there are a lot of topics and even tasks that need to be accomplished. They're very thorough, I think, in laying out an overall objective in skill, knowledge, and skill development. And it takes time for a provider to figure out how to actually do that and be able to do it efficiently and in a timely manner that is acceptable for most, professional pilots.
Well, I would say, Otter, one of the things we noticed is that the documents are great at saying what to do. They're not so great at saying how to do it. And you got to realize that you're saying, here's what you need to do to an industry that doesn't know how to do it. And that's one of the challenges. So we shouldn't be surprised that we're just doing what we did before under a different name. And that's not going to create the paradigm shift. That's why you need this deep understanding, this unique instructor training and expertise to truly implement on the intent of these fantastic resources. Because just saying what has to happen is good, but the devil's in the details. It's all about how. That's what makes the huge difference. Okay, Nick, let's move on here, Otter. Let's go to the next. If you want to learn more about Epic S2, you can go to apstraining.com/epic-S2. It's worth the read. We have a great booklet to download on it as well, if, for example, you're a provider that wants to elevate your implementation. Okay, Otter, over to you.
Yeah, and this graph is just simply trying to lay out what we were just talking about, the purpose of the Epic S2. This what a good upset training program should try to do. You've got this small bubble, shall we say, that small bubble around that airplane in straight level flight. That bubble can represent, shall we say, normal envelope, normal flight, but it also could represent, say, your average skill set or competence of a pilot. The airplane now gets upset or gets out of normal parameters, and say it ends up in that larger bubble there, right? And it's very possible that the pilots now do not have the competence to be able to recover the airplane. They either didn't have the skills to prevent the upset, but here they are now. They're in some time critical life-threatening situation. The airplane is on its way to disaster, and the pilots have to take effective action in a time-critical situation there. And the whole goal of UPRT or upset training is to expand that pilot's competence, right? To not only make him better at prevention, which ultimately is the goal of any good upset training program, is to teach pilots how to better prevent upsets, but give them the recovery skill sets as well to help, again, mitigate the threat of loss control in flight. They've got to learn recovery skills. They need to be current at them as well in order to truly be safer there. So this graph is just an attempt to help give you visually what we're doing here with pilots in upset training. We're expanding their competence, but also giving them the confidence that they have that competence.
And, one thing that's counterintuitive as well, we always hear, well, if we just got really good at prevention, we don't need recovery. Well, we're here to tell you that, first off, history has demonstrated that recovery capabilities are required. That said, the very best way to improve awareness and prevention is training people to the escalation to recovery, seeing those aerodynamic factors and conditions and the mental modeling of what the process looks like all the way into the recovery and coming back helps them recognize and understand way in advance of the airplane ever getting upset in the first place. So the primary value of recovery training is to improve awareness and prevention. And that's very counterintuitive to the industry. And so it's just exciting to see all that playing out after all these decades. Okay, Otter, over to you again.
This is a graph to show the various mitigation levels, in a sense, of the different platforms that really comprise a robust program. Right. So the largest piece of the pie is the on-aircraft components. Right. Unfortunately, it would be nice to be able to say that we could use simulators to fully mitigate loss control in flight. And the industry has been trying it for decades, ever since we've got simulators, and we have some of the most fantastic high technology simulators out there. Even airlines are now required to have simulators that allow pilots to go beyond critical angle of attack there. But unfortunately, the simulator is still the simulator, and there are psychophysiological aspects that pilots have to go through in order to make them resilient in a crisis. And the on-aircraft component of it is the largest contributor to address those human factors at play. Right? The simulator can't do that. Now, adding a simulator to an on-aircraft training program really seals the deal in a sense, because you have to transfer those skills from that aerobatic airplane now to the airplane type specific that you're flying, whether it's a Cessna or a Cirrus or a King Air or a Citation jet or a 737 there. Now, these two main platforms working together have to foundationally come together with academics, right? Our regular run-of-the-mill academics that we get in typical flight training and typical recurrent training and 6158 checks and things like that is not sufficient. You need UPRT-specific academics. There's another piece of the slice here that's got an orange. You can see that's a VR, and that's a tool that we've integrated in recent times that addresses the type-specific aspects for a pilot. So if we get customers here, say that are flying on Gulfstream, we can actually put them now in a Gulfstream cockpit, and they get this environmental transfer to their actual cockpit after having flown in the aerobatic airplane and getting in a class-specific type of simulator.
So one of the things I think, if you can think of VR, you can also equate that to the type-specific training. So one of the other misconceptions is that robust, effective upset prevention and recovery training is largely generic. It's largely transferable to all fixed-wing airplanes. Now, that said, while type-specific training may only represent 5% of an effective implementation of UPRT, it may be all the difference between surviving and not. So you can't leave it behind. You need type-specific UPRT. We especially see that at the airlines or fourth-generation fly-by-wire airplanes like Airbus airplanes, very complicated and degraded modes. You really need to focus on understanding how the system works in an upset or degraded mode, which can lead the pilot into an unfavorable situation. Now, I want to be clear about this slide. This is a fully mitigated paradigm shift you're looking at. Okay, this is the end result. This is not where you are now. And these pies represent generally the impact of the various training platforms. But in reality, they all kind of float together and merge together. One of the challenges of getting UPRT at different providers for on-aircraft than simulation, than maybe academics, they can be disjointed and they can actually conflict or counter each other as well. So that's one of the reasons why APS built all of this into one location. You can do it all in 2.5 days, is to make sure the entire experience, the academics prepare people for practical training, the piston airplane now prepares people for complex airplane training, into the jet airplane, into the simulation, into type specific. It's all complementary. And at the end of it, pilots leave with a completely transformational experience where their skill sets are better than they've ever been before. And it's not uncommon, Otter, you can talk about it, as pilots leaving feeling like, first off, best training they've ever had is one thing, but secondly, the most important safety training they've ever had, and really shocked that the industry doesn't do this type of training.
Yeah, agreed. And I want to iterate something that you said, because I know Tom sees this, and as he talks to potential pilots that want to come through the training, and that is about the simulator, they're like, well, I want to come for upset training, and I definitely want to get in an airplane, but I don't need to get in a simulator because, well, I already get simulator training there. And it's true, they're getting simulator. They're not getting an integrated approach in that simulator. They're not getting trained by a UPRT expert simulator instructor, someone that understands what they just went through in the airplane and how to transfer those skills they developed in the airplane to their type specific airplane in the simulator. So there's a grave gap, I think, if we think that just going through upset training using an airplane only, like an aerobatic airplane, and not having an integrated approach, we see they're missing a lot, and they're leaving risk on the table, shall we say. Tom, is that fair to say when you have your discussions with some of our customers that come through, and you convince them, yeah, you need to integrate the simulator in addition to the airplane? What are they saying when they leave?
Absolutely, and it is amazing. Every one of these platforms has a unique and critical contribution to the solution. And the neat thing about having it all in one facility is, over a period of 2.5 days, you can, with the proper training intensity and proper training density, leave with vastly improved pilot competencies and the ability to deal with an unexpected life-threatening situation. So when they come and experience and they see that they're eliminating these training gaps and maximizing their solution, it's like an epiphany. So it is amazing.
Awesome. Okay, let's carry this forward now to come to where we are. So we talked about, this is a fully implemented paradigm shift, right? This is the fully advanced integrated implementation of UPRT to mitigate your risk as much as possible. You can see that there's a little piece of pie there that's unmitigated. Humans are humans. Airplanes can fail in a way where they're unrecoverable. There are areas of this that can't be fully mitigated, at least not yet in today's world. But let's have a look at what it really looks like. Okay, now, this is not meant to be insulting to anyone. This is not meant to run anybody. This is not personal. This is trying to be a very objective look at the industry. The reason why that graph on the left, which is the exact one that you just saw, is all red, because the column in the left of the statistics is all red. It is the number one threat to air safety that represents nearly 50% of all fatalities in aviation, because the standard way of approaching the mitigating loss of control in flight is in a red condition. It actually looks like that circle on the left. So even with the very best training the industry has available right now, we are making small baby steps in the right direction, but we have to consider the fact that there's more to be done. Remember at the beginning, I said that this massive size of loss of control in flight is because there's a big gap in flight training. And that's what we're talking about now. But what we're trying to accomplish here, what we're challenging providers to do, is to implement that paradigm shift to drive down that arrow. So as one example we talked about with the Delta implementation, they drove that down 50%. Okay, very, very, very powerful implementation. And you can see they did that through an academic and simulation implementation plus type specific training. And that's almost, in fact, what you see in the graph on the left. Okay, let's now jump in here, Otter. So do you want to talk through this, Otter, now about this pathway to crushing loss of control, or how would you like to proceed?
Yeah, I'll start off there. You want to click to the, I'm going to click to the next one. Okay. So, all right. So notice the pie here. Part of it went from red to gray, and that is showing that a piece of the upset training, and an important piece, are appropriate UPRT academics. And there is a certain level of mitigation that comes with just academics. All right. This is one reason why we have an online academy that has various courses in it for professionals that they can take there, because awareness that academics brings, there is a level of mitigation there, but it is not going to fully mitigate the risk. So we've got to have more ultimately. Why don't we go to the next?
Yeah, one thing I'll bring everybody's attention to is have a look at the circle there in the middle of the graphic. See how it's all red, yet academic starts changing the color now to orange. What we want to do is get to the green. Take a look at the arrow at the bottom. We're starting in the red and we're moving to the right. And we're going to take you through the pathway of overcoming the threat of loss of control. So, Otter, here's the full diagram for you if you want to take folks through that.
So the next circle to the right would show, say, a pilot who has, say, come and had some appropriate academics as well as simulator training there. And you can see their risk continues to decrease. All right. In other words, they are getting some level of mitigation through that. Right now, these are not industry type academics or simulators. All right, we're talking about upset training and academics and simulator training that's delivered in an EPIC S2. We talked about that every pilot in control solution standard, right there. And so we're talking about training that is based on the foundation of that. Now, the next circle over is now incorporating the on-aircraft, say, rather than simulator. So you've got appropriate academics, and then the larger slice of the pie is on-aircraft. And we see that if a pilot is going to pick between on-aircraft or simulator, and they can't do both, right, then absolutely pick the on-aircraft. It makes the biggest impact on the pilot from a human factor standpoint, which is largely what upset training is all about, is human factors training. It's the best platform for that. So a substantial amount of mitigation is going to happen with that kind of program. If you look at the next circle over, it now incorporates an integrated approach. Right? Again, this program being delivered by a provider that is EPIC S2 compliant. Okay, we're not talking about just any provider. Again, we're talking about an EPIC S2 provider. If they're using an on-aircraft, they're using a simulator and appropriate academics, look what happens. I mean, you're already turning green in a sense. Right there in the center, you've mitigated a lot of risk in that program there. Now, the last circle on the right is now taking that smaller piece that I talked about earlier, the type specific, and we're doing that through VR, but also incorporating a lifelong training type program through the life plan, through online academics, because skills are perishable. And you can see that this advanced integrated program, as it's titled here, turns you the most green. It mitigates the most risk and will make you actually the safest.
So the right side is a fully implemented paradigm shift, and the left side is where we're at. And, and again, I just want to reiterate what we talked about when we talked about the vision of APS, is that we are pulling the hood back because we want, first off, pilots to get the training they need to save their lives. But secondly, we're challenging providers in the industry to just not accept the status quo. There's a tremendous amount that can be done to mitigate the risk, and embracing and understanding the contribution of training platforms, that there is a better way, that it takes the full functioning of all the 5 elements of the Every Pilot in Control Solution Standard, that you yourself can optimize a provider to provide the best service to pilots, and the industry is really the key to it all. Okay, so let's jump now into something before we end up here. I'm watching for questions. Please, folks, everybody out there, put your questions to us. Part 5 SMS. SMS is a big modern concern right now. You can see that this particular chart has been taken out of ICAO Doc 9859 Safety Management Manual. And what this is essentially a safety risk analysis, a risk matrix. And this one specifically is for loss of control in flight. So let's talk about it. So the color of this diagram is the safety risk profile of the operator. So those colors mean the red is an intolerable risk. And by definition by ICAO, if it's red, you should cease the operation or mitigate it to an acceptable level of risk. Orange means it's a tolerable risk with either risk management or management decision. But where you really want to be is down in the green, which is a tolerable risk, which is where many aspects of aviation are. Even just walking out to the airplane to go taxiing, there's risk associated with it, but it's very much considered a tolerable risk. So let's take a look at it real quick. So we saw in the graphics that loss of control in flight is almost always catastrophic and fatal. So from a severity standpoint, we live in the column on the left, catastrophic A. Now we take a look on a probability standpoint, but we need to take a look at the definitions by ICAO. They define remote as unlikely to occur but possible, has occurred rarely. Well, that really sounds right, doesn't it, based on what we've talked about? Occurred rarely, well, rarely meaning the most fatal aspect of flight operations in the industry. But let's go down to what improbable means. By definition by ICAO, improbable is very unlikely to occur, not known to have occurred, and then yellow is almost inconceivable. Well, I think you would have to agree the number one threat to air safety, responsible for nearly 50% of all fatalities, is clearly remote. And so what we see is when we now merge catastrophic with remote, you can see without mitigation is that most operators in the industry that aren't pursuing robust mitigation of loss of control in flight are sitting right there at that 3A square, or technically speaking, depending on their safety risk profile, potentially an intolerable risk where they need to take action to mitigate it. So the goal of upset prevention and recovery training is to drive down both probability and severity. Very often we equate the probability being driven down by prevention, much like we see at Delta Airlines, and severity being driven down largely by recovery training. But we really want to do both together to reliably drive the organization through a risk management process into the green area. That's the goal. That's what we should be trying to accomplish. And an effectively implemented UPRT program that has been optimized and specifically designed for you, like personalized protocols, is the only way to go down that diagonal into the green area. So it's really important to look into these risk mitigations to mitigate your risk of loss of control in flight. Okay. So we have the worksheet available. We're going to bring the QR code up. Remember that the provider and your auditor needs to assure that the provider is industry compliant, which is phase 1. Phase 2, they need to have optimized their program. We refer that to the Every Pilot in Control Solution Standard. You need to customize the program. That's the orange block for you, which what we talked about today. Then as Otter briefly mentioned, it's not a one and done process. You need ongoing training to continue to top the skills up and to make sure you're staying current with industry. Your provider should be always evolving their initial and recurrent training programs to make sure you're getting the very best training in the world. And we had a chance to look at this sheet. Remember, the goal is you just simply need to go down that left column, right? You fill out the boxes and this will populate what the solutions are. But most importantly, call the provider, call APS, and we're going to take you through the process of interpreting it. So if you haven't done so already, download that sheet, do it, see what you think. If there's acronyms or something in there you don't understand, just reach out and chat with us. If for some reason you're having problems with the sheet or the Excel doesn't work, depending on your variation of what version of Excel you have, just call the office and Tom or one of his team will go ahead and take you through that so you can see what it is, see the results, then talk about what's the best fit for you. Because remember, this spreadsheet is not designed to be an all-inclusive solution for everybody. It's a starting point. It's something that you can look at and you can now knowledgeably talk about this mitigation to optimize your risk mitigation of loss of control in flight. So let's go from there and into questions. But before we do that, and I don't see any questions in here yet, but I'll take a look again. Otter and Tom, why don't you just take turns sharing your final thoughts here on today's event?
I think this is pretty unique. It's probably one of the more unique webinars we've done, although we've covered a lot of material we've talked about in the past, but I think it's unique from the standpoint that this tool, that they have access to is, I think, going to be very insightful. If they definitely will look at it and just think about now, all right, for me and my flight department and for my pilots, all right, do we really want to make a difference in safety and try to mitigate the threat there out there? And this is just a great place to start and start the conversation internally, and then working way out and actually going to providers and have a conversation with them and seeing what they think.
Yeah, and I think if nothing else in our presentation today, it's pretty clear that APS has a conviction for safety, to improve safety, to help you, to grow, to improve your skill sets, and we're here for you. Every pilot that shows up is very often a little apprehensive, and by the end of the program, man, they are just supercharged with energy and gratitude of the value of this kind of training. And again, we're not here just for APS. We're here to evolve industry standards. We're challenging the industry to up its game because it has to. We can't keep that full red circle because that's where we're at now. And there is a way, and it can be done with readily available platforms and instructor expertise, so it's attainable by nearly anyone. Tom, final thoughts?
Yeah, it's such a great tool. It allows you to understand where your destination is, and then you can chat with APS or your provider. And we're passionate about collaborating with safety-minded professionals and providing the best solutions in the industry. So it's just a really exciting tool.
If you look behind Tom's head back there, that's actually, there's a little bit more to it than that, but the idea behind it is to be able to understand what the process is. That top row of that chart on the wall is, this is where you're at. The middle row is how you implement a paradigm shift, and the bottom row is how do you maintain it. And so his team is well trained on that. They understand it, and we see it every single day at APS, and we've been doing this for decades. So with that, I would like to thank everybody out there that joined us today, whether you're watching live or on the replay. Sorry about the hiccup at the beginning, getting it kicked off. I should have been quicker about trying to reset it, but it did come through on Facebook and YouTube and X. And I think we're just going to miss the front of LinkedIn. Otter and Tom, thank you guys for being here today. Just great having you. And I think it's been kind of fun to share this tool with the industry. I hope it leads to a lot of life-saving UPRT, whether it's at APS or at other providers around the world, because there's many of them. So with that, thank you everybody for being here, and we will see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.